Remember me, though I have to say goodbye. Remember me. Don't let it make you cry, for even if I'm far away, I hold you in my heart. I sing a secret song to you each night we are apart. Remember me, though I have to travel far. Remember me. Each time you hear a sad guitar, know that I'm with you the only way that I can be, until you're in my arms again. Recuérdame, hoy me tengo que, mi amor, recuérdame. No llores, por favor, te llevo en mi corazón y cerca me tendrás. A solas yo te cantaré soñando en regresar. Recuérdame, aunque tenga que me agrada, recuérdame. Si mi guitarra os es llorar, ella con su triste canto te acompañará, hasta que en mis brazos tú estés.
Hello, everyone. Welcome once again to our pre-recorded live show. I'm Chris. I'm the pastor here at Kindred UMC.
Hey, I'm Courtney. I'm the Director of Community Engagement at Kindred UMC.
And I'm Preston, and it's almost November.
It truly is.
We have a week.
In fact, when this is out, it will be November 1st.
Oh,
That's true.
welcome to November.
Welcome to November. Hopefully it becomes like tolerable to be outside for a little bit.
I thought it was decent out today.
I've been cold all day. I don't know what it is.
I'm not cold.
I'm not complaining.
We're literally talking about the weather.
Yeah,
Your favorite.
This is compelling.
And a minute ago, we were talking about sports.
Yeah, both. Two of my favorite topics.
well, sports and weather. One of the fields today was covered in snow. That was fun.
What?
I think it was the Kansas City
Oh,
game.
yeah, the KC game.
All right. So topic today is it's kind of out of our norm. We don't usually follow like the liturgical calendar, but since this is literally going to be released on All Saints Day, which is November 1st, which happens to fall on a Sunday this year, and so All Saints Sunday and All Saints Day are the same day for like once every 6 or 7 years, depending on a leap year. And so I thought it would be a good opportunity to talk a little bit specifically about grief around death and theology around afterlife. And there's a specific text that I want to focus on, although it's certainly not the only one. But so it's a little bit, I feel a little awkward because it's a little bit more of a serious tone and we kind of laugh at it and goof it up. But I don't mind it being, laughy goofy, but also there's just a lot of weird Christian grief and faith stuff that gets, I think, mixed up
It's almost
very easily.
And it almost becomes taboo.
Yeah.
We get into a weird taboo sense of, are we respecting the dead or not commending them, or are we to learn from them or just treat them as elders? Or
well, and also my experience growing up in church was a little bit of the we don't want to feel sad because that means we're doubting. And I didn't get that really strongly like a lot of churches can do culturally, but I did get a little bit of it, and I know that a lot of people who have had a church experience kind of walk away with that. I can't be sad because that means I'm doubting. And so it's don't have a funeral where everyone's crying. Have a funeral where everyone's laughing. It's like, well, it's okay to cry.
If
like,
my funeral is not a party, I will be upset.
Everyone's getting iced at your funeral.
Well, I don't. Okay, I don't know.
well, and funerals are parties, but parties can have crying in them. I mean,
Well,
there's
the
literally a
80s
song about it.
Most of my sister's parties ended in crying.
Right.
Those are the best.
Well, I'll be 80 years old or older, maybe 100,
Age might not matter when we're old.
and there'll be Smirnoff Ices hidden everywhere.
Yeah.
So the scripture is going to take us into more of the afterlife theology, but I wanted to kind of at least start with the acknowledgement of there's plenty of room in our faith for grief and sadness, and especially on All Saints' Day, I think that's important. It's okay to miss someone and even kind of question God and have doubts around that as part of your actual relationship with God. That's okay, that's healthy and good, and I encourage people to like lean into that. So let's jump into this piece of text from the book of John, the Gospel of John. It's chapter 14, and it's verses 1 through 7, I think. We have, so in the Methodist Church, we have like a book of worship that has traditional kind of orders of worship and for all kinds of occasions. So there's like a service of word and table, which is like a communion service, and it has everything that you would say to make sure that all theology gets actually addressed, and we say all the right things in the right orders, and we do, you know, all that kind of stuff. And there's some for marriages. There's like a few different options for marriages, and then there's some for funerals, where it kind of spells everything out. And in that, the like introduction, basically, that the pastor is supposed to say at the beginning of the funeral, is this text. Like it actually quotes from this text, like in paragraph form almost, and it just says to the congregation exactly what Jesus says to his people. So this is right before Jesus is about to be arrested. It's like it's the last evening. It's the last gathering with his friends and his students. And he covers a lot of different topics. It's kind of like his final sermon to them. And again, this is all apocryphal. Like, it's very unlikely that these are direct quotes from Jesus that night, because the Gospel of John was written so far after those events actually happened. So again, like I've said before, try not to think of this as like somebody in the room writing down, taking notes, but instead, after about a century or so of the church existing, this was a widely accepted representation of, yes, this is the Jesus we knew, and these are the essences of the teachings that he was giving us. So, because there's going to be some metaphors and abstraction, and people get weird about that with afterlife theology. Even the most progressive people start to like get very literal minded, you know? So let's just kind of be aware of that and avoid that issue entirely. So here we go. 14 verse 1. Jesus talking to his disciples. Do not let your hearts be troubled. Believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house there are many dwelling places. If it were not so, would I have told you that I go to prepare a place for you? And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and will take you to myself, so that where I am, there you may also be, or be also. And you, and you know the way to the place where I am going. Thomas said to him, Lord, we do not know where you're going. How can we know the way? And Jesus said to him, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. If you know me, you will know my Father also. From now on, you do know him and have been. You do know him and have seen him. Sorry, we had fight night party yesterday, and like I've been. I think we yelled a little bit, and my voice is very hoarse. Anywho, so first of all, observations, questions, comments, concerns.
On the text itself, it's got this uplifting tone, I feel, and we've always touched on this. Try not to avoid suffering in life, but take it as you and your own and sit in it and ponder and think and why, and if doubt's a word for you, doubt, whatever, get in your darkness. But is this text something to take our mind off of that? Because it sounded like, well, when you're buried, which now your mindset is, okay, when I'm buried, I'll be there. This isn't a game here. So we're all worried. You're so worried about the end. So instead of that, like that, it sounds like he's saying it's covered.
Yeah, so one important little nuance is we use this a lot to talk to the living about somebody who's just died, somebody who's really important to, So we tend to think of it that way. And remember that this is actually Jesus talking to his disciples about his own death. He's saying, I'm going away now. But don't worry, there's a purpose to that, to where I'm going and why. And he's talking about his own death. So he is trying to kind of prepare his students for when that happens, not necessarily not make them feel sad about it, which is kind of how we always end up going in the church for some reason. Now maybe that's just an American thing or a Western thing, but like that's certainly been my experience for most Christians. We have a hard time with the you're allowed to feel sad, and Jesus feels sad often, and it's okay, and angry too for that matter. So yeah, the whole flipperoo of we use it to talk to people who are grieving, Jesus is actually using it ahead of time to talk about his own death, so that his disciples will be taken care of when he's not there, So anything stands out for you, Courtney?
I think just what you kind of just said about how the church often runs away from allowing people to feel angry or sad or sit in that, and we get very oh, what the fuck am I supposed to do? I don't know.
Yeah.
And that's the only thing that really came to my mind immediately.
Oh, it touches deep with me because I've always wondered on this thing I have of whenever the party ends, or whenever people leave, or when everyone's getting out of the pool, or when the presents are all opened, or whoever's leaving, and now you're back to normal type of thing. It's almost this feeling of, oh, this light's left. Now it's almost a death feeling of where do I go from here?
That's very, I think, exactly how the disciples are feeling. Mm. They're on the cusp of the party's about to end, and we're not sure why, because they don't really even understand the depth of what is about to happen and the intention behind it. Because they're all they see is we picked the right guy, we backed the right horse, and that's going to mean cool things for us, and we're going to win. God's going to help us win. And Jesus is trying to prepare them for the long dark night when he gets arrested and is dying in front of them.
Speaking of accounting, it's an investment speech. Why are you paying for everything today when you can squander's the wrong word, but squander your money away for later, for a rainy day, for it to build up. Squirrel it away. Yeah. Sure, it's a better word. Yeah. For a rainy day when you need it, for an emergency that happens, or for a random plan, or just we have a market here, it builds, and in the market, if you just throw it somewhere into digital space now, it'll just build, and the numbers will go up because that's how the market works. But this is an investment in life of, you can't put all your eggs in one basket, with people too. You've got to, again, it's this suffering point of, if you put all your eggs here, then all your eggs are gone. Save an egg for yourself instead of this selfish, oh, we're on the winning team now, but when our quarterback leaves.
Yeah, I hear kind of where you're going. For me, that's you lost me with the egg thing, I'll be honest. I think I see what you mean, though.
But it's attacking the human condition. When we're down and out.
Yeah, attacking.
Why are we down and out? Why are we accepting that we're down and out instead of look to the future? How can we build from this? Where can we go from here?
Both are necessary.
Right.
But
there are both.
Right.
Instead of well, I'm just going to sit here then because until someone else comes and not
Yeah.
really do anything about it.
Yeah.
It's just I wanted a weird take on this just because I've heard it so many times too. That's really what all this is I've heard these stories millions of times, so can we flip it on its head and see really what they're getting at?
Well, let's take a look at a couple of different little cultural things. So Jesus is talking about, in my Father's house there are many rooms. He's using this metaphor to talk about something that is beyond death. The kingdom of heaven, you might say.
Which, to cut you off, is beyond comprehension. So
right.
Them hearing this is...
It's metaphor.
What are you saying?
Yeah, it's a... And also, it's a little unclear, like, when afterlife theology started becoming a part of, like, Judeo-Christian. It kind of morphs and molds, and even our concept of heaven today in modern Christianity is very different from, like, the Book of Acts and the Revelation of John. Like, all these other books that talk about it very differently than we talk about it in the church today. So it's this weird changing thing, and I think it's by virtue of that, exactly what you said, this kind of, you can't conceive of it. You can't wrap your mind around it. So he's using this metaphor, and he says, I'm going to prepare a place, and you will know the way. You'll know how to get there. I'm going to come back and bring you, and you will know the way. And then Thomas says, no, we don't. We don't know the way. What are you talking about? And then Jesus says this very kind of, I am the famous phrase now, I am the way, the truth, and the life. Which is a cool way to put it. Also, the Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible, literally means the law, Torah. Hebrew people of the day would have called the Torah, one of the nicknames for it would have been the way, the truth, and the life. So Jesus is intentionally using the same description of the law to talk about himself. And so there's a weird thing happening here, because I think one of the core things about Jesus' message is, as opposed to the Pharisees and the scribes and the Sadducees, who are very focused on obeying the law. Be obedient to the law, and that will get you into the kingdom of heaven. However you interpret that phrase, that will bring about the kingdom of heaven. You will be a citizen with God, and God will be your God, And Jesus is saying, I am the way, the truth, and the life, in this very abstract, so now it's not just what you know and how to follow it, and following the law and obeying these rules. Now it's a relationship with a living being. It's not about following the rules, the law, the Torah. It's about following me in a trusting, loving relationship. Is also what Jesus is getting at. So here, this is just a little analogy that I think is fun and helpful. My wife and I are actually, she was high school friends with this woman, Christine Barr. She was a girl then. She's a woman now. And now we're friends because that's the way marriage works. And her boyfriend and her came to visit from Kansas. And her father's a world-renowned ballroom dancer. When she came to visit, I'm not sure if she's still doing this or not, but she was in the dance biz. She was recruiting and representing or something. She had a lot of connections with dance performers and stuff like that. And so randomly, while they were here for the weekend, she just got a random message from one of her dance friends, Randy Strong, who is she was on Dancing with the Stars, or So You Think You Can Dance. Not Dancing with the Stars, So You Think You Can Dance. She's a dancing, touring dancer, And so she called up Christine and was like, hey, I saw on Facebook, you're in Florida. We're performing in Florida tonight. Do you want to? And they were less than an hour's drive away. And so she, hey, do you want to come? Like, yeah, that'd be great. Can you get 4 tickets? Great, awesome. So we get 4 tickets for free to go to this dance performance, and we go, and Francisca and I met dancing, so like, not only is it just a fun excuse to go to a thing, but also it's like, oh, we like dancing. They're like, it's a thing for us. So we go, and as we go and show up with the tickets that we didn't pay for, they usher us into this really nice, beautiful theater. It was a converted Catholic cathedral at one point, and they changed it and made it into a theater. And like, we get ushered in down, and like, we keep walking down and down and down, and then like, they seat us in like the 3rd row center. We're like, bam, right there, and there's all these people behind us who paid for their tickets, and like, we're like VIPs. And so, the dancing performance happens great, and then we get to go backstage essentially because she just texted her, and she's like, "Oh yeah, come on back." And so then we got to go back and hang out with all these people, and I met Leslie Ann Warren, she was an actress in Clue, and like, it was this really cool, great night. We didn't pay for it, didn't even know it existed. It was all because we knew Christine and Christine knew Randy, and it's just like this. That's the way it goes. And so like, Jesus is trying to convert the mindset of people who think the only way in is to pay this impossible price and to say, no, you know me. Like, if you will engage with me, then that's how the kingdom of heaven is like made manifest, which is a really hard concept for people because we have a hard time. So like, that's, for some reason, it's very hard to accept that we don't actually have to do anything. Like that there really isn't a thing we need to do to be part of this other than just be like, oh, okay.
Yeah, people get so tripped up over that they create their own check boxes and lists that you have to meet to fit their standards to even be a part of the church.
So what's up with that? Why do you think that is?
You want the real answer or the funny answer?
Well, both.
Well, it's kind of the same thing, but people's monkey hands are in it. That's just what it is. A business model is started. We need people to show up to look at this thing, and if not, we can't pay for things for people to keep.
I think they're
chicken
a
and
control and
I was going to say, I think
yeah.
it's a hierarchy. I think it's
Sure.
a power struggle. It's I want to be the best so that I can get the best, and everybody below me isn't going to get the best because I'm the best. And
yeah, I'm always surprised at how much the message of the Gospels is a surrender to what is, rather than a fight for what could be, or even a fight for so much of Christianity has been converted into like moral ethics. Like people think they go to church to become a good person, and like they think that what faith really is about learning the right things to say and do and be and look like even, and then that will somehow make me a good person, an acceptable person, a person who's like love worthy, and maybe even self-love worthy. And like, it's a really tricky, like...
Well, it's putting lipstick on a pig.
Yeah.
Still a pig. Smells like a pig.
Well, and so here's what I'm actually wrestling with here, because I'm saying all this, and I do think there is a very strong point. In fact, I say it a lot in our groups, like the starting place of all of this is that you are utterly acceptable and lovely and worthy, and that period. That there anything beyond that as a starting point is not Christianity. Like, you are loved and accepted as you are, period. And nothing else needs to change.
It's funny, yeah. It's funny to think that all the buts in that statement there are pretty socially contrived.
Mm-hmm.
But,
well, here's the difficult with it, though. Also, if you start to like cooperate with God in whatever way works best, whether that's like actual like Christian spiritual practices like prayer in the morning and reading scripture and maybe even fasting, and like, or if it's just by like however you are communing with whatever the creative life force of the universe is. Like, people do that in lots of different ways. If you are doing that and nothing changes about what you're doing or how you're behaving or what's going on in your thoughts and your feelings and your like, then that's highly suspicious, like, and so there is this weird connection between like this grace and accepting it and cooperating with it, and also behavior changes like necessarily, and like, but we often get it reversed, I think. Like, and because they're so closely related and correlated, I think we like flip it around,
Well, I think the change is the scary part. We found out in the prodigal son story, or prodigal God, whatever you wanted to call it, when he was literally in the pig pen with them and pops up and goes,
came to himself.
Yeah, right. Mm-hmm. The change is, everything's changed right now.
Yeah, his actual cooperation with the accepting what is, the truth of what is, him accepting that necessarily changed his whole, like, what he's going to do and what's valuable to him and how he's going to behave from now on.
And the point of the parable was to hyperbolize it and make it almost a silly...
Yeah, to set up the perfect conditions for it.
Right, but to make it an effortful thought in your head that it's okay to accept change or see change happen in others while it might not be happening in you, and it's something to dial back on.
Yeah, well, and that's, again, one of the messages at the heart of the gospel is this, like, that's one of the things he's often dealing with on the law side of things, is like this weird jealousy that, you don't have to change, but look at all the stuff I changed. Like, and it's this weird jealousy that's like, wait a minute, he gets in? Like, he shouldn't be allowed to the party. I've seen what he does. I've seen how he behaves. I'm doing so much better. Like, that, there's just a human competitive tendency, I guess, to start immediately comparing. So now the other weird thing too about this is, I don't actually think that Jesus is talking about a literal afterlife. And if you like, I understand if you disagree, if those people out there who disagree with me, I understand the disagreement. I don't have a strong, powerful argument for it, other than he's just always talking about this kingdom of heaven idea in the present. And for it to all of a sudden switch into this, like what I think he's really talking about is the nowness, the possibility of the now. And the he came to himself moment. It's always right there, and all it takes is like this adjustment of cooperation. Like, stop trying to fix and do and make the right decisions and instead, if you'll just kind of surrender to where I've got you, and that is such a weird counteractive to cooperate through giving up. We've studied a lot of those stories, like a Jacob wrestling by the riverbank, and even the Cain and Abel story is like the counterexample of what happens when you don't do that. Like, all he had to do was stay. He'd killed his brother, and he's the one who walks away from God's presence, and God was not requiring that he does that, and not asking him to do that, and not punishing him for it or anything. He just couldn't surrender to the idea of what he had done and what that means for him now. So that's a weird kind of I don't know. I don't really have like a great takeaway, and maybe even that's like perfect for All Saints Day, because grief, and we think that we're going to fix the grief somehow, that we'll find an answer in it, and that there will be like a magic tying of a bow around the loss of something, and somebody kind of passing uncontrollably into something that you just don't know and can't bring back, can't undo. That's a lot for people to deal with, but there isn't a fix for it.
And that's what we all secretly know, and that's literally why our frontal lobe exists, is we know how to get out of this now, kind of,
Yeah.
better than others. And
Well, we're the only animals on the planet who are burdened with the knowledge of our own death.
right,
Like,
right.
no other Jonah doesn't know he's going to die one day. Like, he doesn't have to deal with that possibility, you know? He doesn't know that we're going to die. Like, he doesn't really worry about whether or not we're okay because it doesn't occur to him that that can even happen, you know? But we know very early on that like one day that just happens to people we care about, and then one day it'll happen to us. And like, it is a scary thing, and there isn't like a nice, great speech that someone can make that will just fix that, you know?
No, and fix is not the right word either.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think trying to fix it creates more of a problem.
Yeah, I think you touched on something there that made me itch. It's always, you got to get your hand in. I could make this process stop. I know I can do it.
Mm-hmm.
Dies, leaves some kind of legacy. Whoever comes in, it's like the same cycle over and over and over and over and over. I feel like this text is like, there's no cycle. Just listen. And no one's stopping. There's too much drive to get away from it.
Oh,
that
yeah.
it just.
Well, when I worked at the hospital, doctors, a very regular part of their job is somebody dying, their patients dying.
Yep.
And yet as a chaplain, I would be there often to help support when that message was given to the family. Like, he didn't make it. And I'm always surprised at how difficult it is for medical professionals to say, I'm so sorry your husband died. Like, they can't, they find like little subtle ways, they have to tell them somehow, and they find little subtle ways to say it without saying it. And they'll say like, he passed, which I've literally seen. He passed, and a family goes, passed what? Like, they passed a test? Like, they think he passed the test. So they're like, oh, good. And it's like, no. I mean, like, he passed away. You know, and like we just can't quite say die or dead, or like, it's a really hard, and it even feels a little heavy and hard to say. Like, and there's something in the like, we just don't want to talk about it. We don't want to feel it. We don't want to be aware of it. And I think it's remarkable that in our faith we have a regular, recurring, like every year we talk about everyone who has died this year, you know? And like, that's what Halloween is. It's the night before that. It's this, like, and it's supposed to be the night when we can commune with them, like little kind of, and then some trickstery, fun, like folklore got involved, and that's where Halloween comes from. But like, this idea that as Christians, we are empowered and called to actively kind of face it and look at it. And I have some Enneagram stuff. As a 4, there's something particularly lovely to me about like making beauty out of sorrow. Mm-hmm. It's just a core thing for me. And I think there's something really lovely about our faith that acknowledges like mortality, and it can be morbid and can be a little gruesome even when we talk about like, we worship a man on a cross, you know? Like, I think that's an important part of it, that we don't just go around kind of like talking about the fun stuff, that we have places in our faith and in our stories to really just feel heavy about grief and loss and even just our own mortality. And, you know, especially as we're ending this year, God, I hope next year is better. But like, it's okay to have a heaviness about this year. Like, it's okay to have a heaviness about all kinds of terrible things that we've gone through together as a country, you know? And then I'm sure the personal stories of like individual households, you would have even more stories piling up on top of the stuff we're all facing, you know? And like, I think there's a loveliness in the like, yeah, sometimes it is morbid, and sometimes we do face death, and that's also part of our faith. Our faith doesn't suddenly disappear and leave us high and dry in those moments.
I think the morbidity of it is alleviated by an acceptance. So I'm sure you have millions of stories on this, and you've said a few too, of seeing someone on their deathbed, or they're right there and their family's nowhere around, and you've got the 5 minutes, and just seeing complete release. I know I have 5 minutes now, or I know it's happening today, and just let go, just accept. That weird acceptance that none of us can really do yet is this. We have this just struggle, and once that struggle, someone else's struggle hits your struggle, and there's no acceptance of, we're on the same level here.
There's something interesting that, so in the hospital, particularly when we use the phrase actively dying, because it's very actually rare unless there's like trauma or like an accident or something. It's rare that somebody dies kind of in an instant, especially at the end of life when somebody's dying. It's a process of like days at a time, you know, and like, so there's these little strategies that people who know that their loved one's about to go, they're just trying to kind of grasp onto anything. And one of the common ones that I heard from a lot of people was they wanted to be there at the moment when a person died, and as if that was. And the problem with that is that, kind of just like a lot of mammals, humans have a tendency to die when they're all alone. And so, like, so many times I would hear like of a spouse or a granddaughter, or, you know, somebody who was like, I want to be here. I'm not leaving their side. I want to be here when I don't want them to be alone. And trying to get through the idea that dying is a process. It is this almost like separating process that's happening. And they're kind of here sometimes and not, and it starts to get in this ebb and flow type of a situation, and then usually people will hold on until like that person leaves to go get coffee or uses the bathroom, or like, and it's when they're out of the room that suddenly the last like moment happens, and it's a weird thing that we have. I assume it's that we have that kind of control over the timing of our own death. Like, that's a strange phenomenon, that like people wait until they're alone to die. And like dogs and cats do it. I know from like lots of pet stories where the pet will just like seclude itself alone when it knows it's going to die, and it'll just go away. And then, you know, one day you'll find its body, but it went to be alone so that it could die alone, which is strange that we do that, you know. But that propensity to try and like latch onto something, if I'm here at the last moment, then somehow that will. And it's like, no, you've been with them for all of these moments. You know, that's just another little moment. It's not a real thing. You know, you're here in the dying process, and that's what. And so we're trying to invite people to really feel what's happening in real time and be present rather than escape out of it.
So, and you're touching on this investment thing I was talking about with the eggs, and it's so easy to think about it as money, but investing in relationships with people. And once you do pass and it eventually happens, instead of thinking of it selfishly of, I'm leaving this to my kids here and they know how to act and I've taught them that and me, it's we are like this. And it could be because of, or it's just, we've just learned how to act like this and someone's taught us how to do it, lived with us like that or whatever, and has changed something to make us feel better in that way, which naturally spreads.
Yeah, it's these are all the things that matter that at the end to most people are all like gains of an inch over time. You know, just an inch by inch by inch, and then over a lifetime that builds into this huge journey. And yet we have a tendency to try and cope with things by making them like sprints, or you know, like, here, let me give you, if I can give you these last perfect words that are going to ring with you and stay with you forever. It's like, no, your life lived. Your life lived is the last statement, you know. The last statement doesn't matter nearly as much as all the rest of it. And that's hard. That's a hard perspective for a lot of people to have, too, because it also leads to like wasted time and wasted effort and fears of I've wasted the time I had. And like that's a hard one too, you know?
That ties into that suffering point of what do you consider wasteful, and have you had time to think on it, or are you going too fast and don't have time to sit and think and be in the dark for a second?
Yeah.
And go, well, what is wasteful, and is this meaningful to me and others, and am I making a statement here? Not necessarily. It's like a selfless legacy type of feeling of I'm leaving my mark, but I want others to feel the same.
Yeah, that the measure is in the relationships and the people that the mark you've left, not on the world, but in life.
Yeah, you hear it time and time again. I have all the money in the world and end up alone. What have I won?
Yeah.
Right.
I
think it's that exact statement.
Again, I don't have a great wrap-up resolution. I know we're kind of ending early too, but
But you were tying it in All Saints Day, if this is coming out on that day, and I had a point, which is I can't see it now, but it's to keep it light, which we don't have to, but it's very odd that through generations we've kept these outlines and scriptural references and text and stuff to do of we have a funeral, 1, 2, 3, 4, you're going through this, and this is how everybody does it. It's so silly to me and funny that there's a book of this and a book of that.
Here's the thing, and I always, because whenever I have done funerals for people, they, we basically are crafting the service to get, we don't have to follow step by step.
Right.
But I always advise, let me open the service with the opening from the book of worship, because there is, especially in times where that can feel chaotic, like the death of someone who's close to you, there is something really primal and humanly connected about hearing those words read and knowing that these are the words that we've been sharing for 2000. This is almost, and it changes it into almost a steadfast foundation, so that we can then begin to actually talk about and tell stories about this person and acknowledge that we're not going to see them again, at least in any literal way,
But to not forget the connection we have in life and death. We have this first connection and then the last connection.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be the physical one. The mental life and death, the suffering life and death, the friendship life and death, the relationship life and death. Things that are starting and things that sometimes have to end.
Yeah.
Literally, metaphysically, whatever.
Yeah, and again, we're the only people, or we're the only animals on the planet who have that and know that ahead of time, and can actually benefit from that knowledge. To know that if you're lucky, you can expect about 80 to 90 years.
And that's just the physical. And when you go more relationship of, I've got to get out of this friend. This has to die with me leaving, or I'm going in the same direction they are, type of feeling too.
Well, something that weird happened to me when I was right around, I guess, 34, 35, somewhere around there. When I turned 34, 35, it started actually occurring to me that because it's weird to be 35. I'm 37. It's weird to be 37. It's weird to be that close to 40. You know what I mean? It feels weird to me.
Because I was going to say I haven't started actively thinking about that.
You can start now.
Right. Well,
I mean, I could.
I know that most people don't, but it comes eventually. And what that actually did, first I had anxiety about it and had to work through that and think through it and then feel my way through it and but it actually is a very powerful, it made me get a lot more active about, because I as much as I love being the pastor of First Eustis UMC, I did not like the city or the town of Eustis. It was not a good fit for me. And it was kind of coming into this knowledge of dude, we die one day. That was you know what, I need to start getting very realistic about strategizing about where my next appointment is and what do I have the ability to influence, because there is a little bit of an urgency when that becomes a part of your thinking, you know. And like I didn't start thinking about it until I was mid-30s. Like,
but the influences that also helps you, which is
Yeah.
a fun thing to say to a pastor, because you're supposed to be influencing others and take heed and goodness from it and feel good about it. I'll bet 80% of them are not there. All
I
right.
can tell you from candid conversations with lots of my colleagues, being a pastor is a very frustrating and from what I hear, like often not rewarding job. And now I don't feel that way. I'm fortunate. I actually get a lot of enjoyment from the work that I do, but a lot of that is because I was like, hey, you die one day. So, and I started working on and not just working on, but literally praying about, like out loud, like I want to be, essentially I described this work, you know, like not in the midst of COVID for sure, but like I described building a church that we have been building for the past year. And that was the work that I really wanted to do, and it was this you die one day kind of a motivation. And like, it can be scary to look at, but it can also be so profoundly incorporated into like your identity in a healthy way that really leads us to be present in what we're doing. Like, you'll never be doing this ever again, you know? Like, whatever it is you're doing, you'll never be doing it again exactly the same way. That's just the way it works. And so like there's a huge benefit in like really being present in what, and again, it's to go back to what we're talking about, surrendering to what is. Like surrendering and this is more Buddhist, but I think it tracks with Jesus' gospel, surrendering to the what could have been, or the expectation of like what I think I am worthy of, or what I wish I was doing, or what, you know. And like Pete Holmes has a really good bit about it, about people getting stuck in traffic and being like, God, it's like, what are you doing? Like, oh, I'll be happy when I get to work. Like, be happy now. Like, you're stuck in traffic, put on a podcast, call a friend, save a friendship. Like, you can be and surrender to what is and be fully enjoying and present. Maybe not enjoying, because sometimes it sucks, you know, but being present in even it sucking and being like, this is life, this is humanity, this is all part of it, you know, all part of this like great thing that is existence and consciousness bringing itself into existence. Like, there's something really magical and marvelous going on all the time if we can surrender to that moment.
I was going to say that most of us are missing.
Yeah.
Very badly.
Yeah.
We're missing by a long shot.
It was funny. We were lazy today, and so we decided to order pizza for dinner. And like, we got it from one of our favorite places, but we have to Uber Eats it because it's so far away, and we have to like pay a little extra to have them go get it. And so we're sitting there, and like, I was shocked I felt like a little kid again. I was sitting there going like, 15 more minutes for that pizza to get here, you know? Like, I found, and like, so there's two ways to do that. One is like, I'll be happy when the pizza gets here. What I did internally to try and surrender to the moment was I started connecting with a little kid, me, who was like so excited for pizza. Like, and it was like, no, enjoy this moment right now. That's like, pizza's about to come. Like, how often do you get to feel so strongly about something so stupid as bread and cheese, you know?
Yeah.
Like, enjoy the strong feeling that what it is to be alive in this moment, waiting for and like, I'll be damned if it didn't work. Like, it became fun. And then I started asking, because my wife had it on her phone. And I was like, hey, how much time now? Like, and then we kind of joked back and forth about, oh, she's picked it up, yeah. Like, and it turned into something that was really delightful and fun, rather than this torturous wait for something that I was hungry for.
And speaking of wasting time or feeling wasteful or wasting a moment of realizing pain and suffering and either relish in it or learn from it, just be there
Yeah.
What are you thinking of? What are you thinking about? Stop it.
Yeah, and it's hard to do, and it gets even harder when we start to talk about like traumatic experiences.
Yeah.
So let's be clear. I am not talking about, because there are certain actual healthy coping mechanisms that come into play when people are in danger or when they're being abused. Like if you're in active, like no, lean into the coping mechanisms, survive, get the hell out of there. And then later we can start to unpack that in a safe space with maybe a counselor and some support, But for the most of the everyday that we're doing, the driving in traffic or the sitting at work doing a boring part of the job, or like all of these different things, like you can surrender to that moment and find that there is a living, like magical, miraculous thing happening right then and there. It's just like everything else, it is a practice. These are not things that naturally occur to the human condition, and it takes actually trying it and doing it, and which is a weird thing to say about surrendering, surrendering, because it isn't really an effort as much as it is this kind of like release and let go of it. But practicing doing that, it'll change your life. It'll change the way you approach. It makes people more accepting and loving and gracious, and usually makes them the person to turn to in time of crisis and need, because they really know how to surrender to what is and move forward from there. So there you go. We're all over the place this week. That's fine. Some weeks are going to be that way. Can you tell we had a big old party last night? That's what it feels like to me. Like I'm just drained.
Yeah, I'm so tired.
We're doing it again
On Saturday. Yeah.
tonight.
No.
No, not tonight.
A week from today.
On Halloween though. So hopefully next week
Yeah,
won't be like
Preston.
this either.
I'll be in Jacksonville.
Anything for the good of the order? Last thoughts? Anything? Okay. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Amen.
No
We'll do
llores,
better next
por
week.
favor.
Why are you
Te llevo en mi corazón y cerca me tendrás. A solas yo te cantaré, soñando en regresar. Recuérdame.